Hello and welcome to From the BLN, the Burnley podcast. I'm Andrew Greaves and I've got a small but perfectly formed squad with me tonight, Chris Borden and Paul Woodhouse. Looking ahead to Burnley versus Coventry, or Coventry versus Burnley if you're being pedantic. Clarets travelling to the West Midlands for another one of these important promotion running games against Frank Lampard's vastly improved but stuttering Coventry City side. And Chris, I mean, we keep saying there's no easy games at this stage of the season, and we've followed up the Bristol City, who are also promotion chasing, I guess, if you could call them that, with another promotion chasing side. What are you expecting from the Clarets, but also from Frank Lampard's Coventry?
Well, I said they've been on a remarkable run of results, haven't they? That sort of best club form in 55 years or something like that. Which you've to take your hat off to Frank Lampard. I don't think I was convinced when he was linked with the Burnley job in the summer, but he's proven me wrong, big style so far. But I believe since all the sort of hoo-ha about the historical sequence of results, they've lost 2 in 3, haven't they? You know, Sheffield United dismantled them really last Friday night. They lost to Leeds in that run, and if Burnley are going to be maintaining their place in the status quo, then they've got to follow suit. But, he's shown he's been he's tactically. I think I'd sort of questioned his tactical prowess, but he's switched between 3-5-2. He plays like a Christmas tree at times. He's getting the best out of Jacques Rudoni, who's a creative midfielder, and Mason Clark out wide. Sims, who could be a handful, he's getting more of a look in with Brandon Asante at times as well. And I mean, it's an awkward one, but I firmly would expect Burnley to go there, and as they have done predominantly all season, especially away from home, it's gone there and rolled up, professional job, and do what it takes to get the 3 points.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, Chris mentioned there the kind of what we've done all season. There has been times as a Burnley fan where you've wondered whether we're ever going to win away, and this season feels very different, doesn't it? We talk about professional jobs and that defensive stability at the back with that back five barely conceding a goal. These kind of trips, without getting kind of too confident, don't perhaps hold the same level of fear as we'd have perhaps had at this stage of previous seasons or seasons gone by. A trip to Highfield Road perhaps would have been greeted with a little bit of a, oh, God, this is going to be a bit of a tough one. I'm not saying it's going to be an easy game, but there has to be a confidence in the Burnley camp, given what we've done so far this season, doesn't there?
Well, now you just cursed them, haven't you? There's absolutely no reason whatsoever we should be going anywhere away, especially this particular season, when we've set up so well away from home, and we've obviously forcing sides to come on us. And it's, what would you expect of Coventry? They've got to get a result. And, even though they looked like totally shambolic at times against Sheffield United, especially the first half, they did come into it a little bit, didn't they? Towards, the end of the second half, but it was nowhere nearly enough. So I think if we can put anything, even a half average performance, they'll see us. I would have thought get at least a draw. But it's Coventry are doing what Coventry have done in their recent history. Shocking start to the season, come good towards the end of the season, and in fits and starts. So the last couple of results don't look too clever for them. I'm not going to say we're going to go there and get a result, but it'd be very nice if we did.
Yeah, and Chris, I mean, just looking at the kind of other fixtures, Leeds away at Luton Town, given the kind of recent run they've been on, that's not a kind of gimme as bad as Luton have been. Same time kickoff as us, 12:30, and then Sheffield United go to Oxford United. So all 3 of the top 3 away from home, all with tough-ish fixtures. We know what Oxford United have been like at home. Yes, we smashed Luton at their place on opening night, but it's not inconceivable that whoever gets a positive result out of the three of us, and there may be two of us, it may all three of us get positive results, it could really be that kind of weekend where the championship table gets fractured a little bit in that top three, couldn't it?
I've got to be honest. I'm looking at all three teams' run-ins, and Burnley probably looks, slightly more difficult on paper. And you're wondering, like, where will Leeds and Sheffield slip up? On the face of it, I don't think either of them will this weekend. But who had Leeds down to draw home to Swansea on the weekend? Especially, I mean, everyone was sort of streaming away from the turf on Saturday, and the big news was that Leeds had gone back in front, and it was one of those they've done it again. The Ellen Road crowd have sucked the ball in injury time, and they've nicked another one at the death. And you wonder how that. I mean, Meslier again. He's a juggler, isn't he? It's inconceivable. The errors he's made, and he's cost them out. You sort of reading the Leeds fans on social media this week, and half of them all but give up the ghost, and you're thinking, well, you're still second in the table, It's you've got a formidable squad, They again, like, probably a proportion of Burnley fans who are still not convinced of Scott Parker for some reason. There's the same with Leeds and Farker, who he knows the roadmap to championship promotion as well as Scott Parker. But you wonder how that's going to pan out as well, don't you? With he's come out and said that Carl Darlow's going to take the goalkeeper jersey this week, so he's got that in nice and early rather than spring it on his goalkeeping department in the dressing room.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, we kind of did something similar last year with Trafford and Muric. I don't think we were quite as explicit. I think Muric basically appeared on a team sheet an hour before one of the games, and company explained it afterwards. It's a bit of a gamble, isn't it? I'm going to come on to some of the bits that Scott Parker said in his press conference in a second, because I think there's a real kind of, I'm always really impressed with Parker, even though he doesn't really say very much, but he picks his words well. I mean, Farker, looking at his press conference today, didn't want to talk about the playoffs. He's basically saying, we're Leeds United, we don't always do it the easy way. Nobody really does it the easy way. But it is a big call to make, and to kind of be so open with it 48 hours away from kickoff, isn't it? I mean, there's clearly, he's managed that situation behind the scenes, and it might give the Leeds fans a bit of a boost, given some of the social media stuff, as Chris mentioned. But it is a gamble, isn't it, when you're replacing your goalkeeper of all players at this kind of crucial time of the season.
Well, especially in this case, because they were crying out for this to happen before Christmas, weren't they?
Yeah.
He's been the weak link for quite some time. And so to get to this point, after you've backed him all this time, and say, well, actually, I was wrong, and I think it's a very different situation to the one with Trafford. I think Trafford for Muric was a lot more about the way that we played, and trying to gain some kind of tempo and momentum that we'd had in the Championship because of Muric's ability with the ball at his feet. But when you compare the two, arguably, there were more howlers came out of Muric in his little spell, even though his distribution was infinitely better, and we saw a slight uptick in the way that we played. But I think that was basically it. Meslier has had some absolute stinkers, and you can see him being out the door, can't you, really, after the end of this season, unless he really turns things around. But hopefully this other fella has a mare as well. That'll be nice.
It would be quite nice, wouldn't it? Quite good. I just wanted to pick up on some of the stuff Scott Parker said in his press conference. I mean, he talks all the time about improvements and needing improvements. But one of the quotes that got me is, and this is a quote from Scott Parker, "I want them excited. I'm excited. We're all excited." That's probably one of the biggest words that we're constantly using in meetings every time I approach this team. And Chris, I mean, that kind of excitement is different, isn't it, from what a lot of other coaches perhaps look at. I'm not saying, coaches don't use the word excitement, but really with the run we've been on, the run of undefeated games, the clean sheet, now is the time for him to want his players to be excited about what they can achieve, isn't it? I mean, it's not about getting giddy, but it's about getting them in a frame of mind where every single one of them, and it feels like that when you watch the various clips and what have you, every single one of them, you want them excited to go out and play for this football club and to push this club over the line, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. You can fall flat on your face when you you meet that head on, and the way they celebrate victories with the fans. I mean, it's becoming commonplace in modern football. But I've no issue with that. It's points are hard won by, especially at that end, this end of the championship, and especially in the Premier League. Then why not? You've grafted all week in training. And you've gone out there and achieved whatever result you've achieved, and go and celebrate it. Why should you hang your head and walk into the dressing room all meek and mild? That's your relief. It's a release for the fans. It's a release for the players. And yeah, you have to embrace it. You have to I mean, one of the three teams are going to fall short. And one of them is then going to have to pick themselves up to go through a playoff campaign that may well end up with you facing a formidable task. Without getting ahead of ourselves. You can imagine if you play Sunderland in a playoff final, essentially a cup final, and you might have a similar amount of fans in the stadium, but their backing, is famed. They were fabulous backing. I mean, bloody hell, they can't take a penalty to save their life. Old Ian missed one last weekend on top of Isidore's fun and games at Burnley. But I mean, you can liken it to it's slightly different approach from Coyle, because Coyle was all ultra positive, and you could feel the belief, and they embraced that. Although, when they've beaten Reading at home in the first leg of the playoff game, there's no celebrating, when it's half time. There was no over egging the pudding there as such. But I'll always remember going round Turf Moor before the Wembley final, and they had the press conference, and bumping into Robbie Blake, and he sort of saying like, "What? You're all right." And I was like, "Yeah." And I was a bit sort of very, very, very nervous. Playoff final, anything can happen. It don't matter whether you're better than the opposition, worse than the opposition, whatever. We've seen, we closed a 12-point gap on Stockport and beat them. They got two cents off and couldn't handle the occasion. Chef U, they ended up with 2 cents off on the day, didn't they, in 2009, and they finished above Burnley. But Robbie Blake knew Burnley were going to win that playoff final. Yeah. They just knew it. The whole squad did. And to go out there and then deliver that is another thing. But you sort of sense that there's a belief. That's probably the main thing, and you can feel it. I think we're improving at the perfect time. We could have had a hatful at the weekend. Should have had a hatful at the weekend. And probably should have had a third 4-0 win at Turf Moor on the spin. But fingers crossed they can. That'll take them. Where we want them to go. This belief.
Yeah, and Woody, I mean, Parker always. We've seen various sides of Scott Parker, haven't we? I mean, we'll come on to Keeping the Faith, the kind of mini documentary series, but it was really striking was the Blackburn game, which I think was the first episode of that particular series, where he was very calm and he said, "I spend hours staring at the ceiling trying to work out how to deliver a message," but he's clearly got many dimensions, hasn't he, in terms of, if at times he can take the emotion out of things. And I think there's that famous, I think he's at Bournemouth, the clip of him delivering a half-time team talk where he says, "Look, it's about taking the emotion out of it. We've got a job to do. Don't get emotional." But actually, and I've been really impressed, and I'm a bit like Frank Lampard. I wasn't I wasn't sold on the idea of Scott Parker, but he's like an onion, isn't he? There's loads of layers to him under that very expensive jacket and cardigan and jumper and polo shirt and snood and scarf and all of this kind of stuff, where he clearly can adapt. You know, he always talks about a group of men. You know, it feels, every way he talks about his squad, there's a bit of a fatherly figure there, but there's also a bit of a comrades in battle. There's also a bit of a, you know, a group of men who just enjoy each other's company and want to kind of be the best they can be, and we saw that with the Traitors episode. But it's really impressive to kind of look from the sidelines and see perhaps even an evolution in him as a person and as a manager, isn't it?
Yeah, he's a lot brighter than he comes across in interviews, is Scott Parker. I don't think he necessarily likes the public-facing piece of it, but I think there's a hell of a football brain going on. And you can tell that from when he was a player, there was always a little bit more to Scott Parker than people gave him credit for. Yeah. He was always a little bit classier. He always had a little bit more grit about him. And you can see as a person and the way, you know, like you just said, how he speaks to players and how he speaks about players, that there's a psychological element to him, that he understands what needs to be said, what needs to be done, which doesn't mean that you're always obviously going to get it right. But I think that speaks to a very nuanced way of shaping the way he's leading the team and leading a group of players. And I thought it was interesting in that one thing in keeping the faith when he's speaking. I think we've spoken about it before, when he was talking about, you know, boys to men, and he was being quite deliberate in the way he was stating, you know, you're all young lads kind of thing, but you're growing up, you know, and I'm seeing that, and how they were responding to that as individuals. And you know that they're all bought in. And like Chris is saying, you know, the idea of them being excited is not like you say kids at Christmas. It's they want to take on this challenge of the last piece of the season. And as a mentality, that's vastly different to what you're hearing from Leeds. When you start dropping keepers and whatnot, and it's like, oh, there are various ways to go up and all this there are doubts creeping in there. That's what that implies. Whereas being excited, yes, as Chris said, we may not necessarily go up, but it sounds like we're going to give it a damn good try and that we want to take on that challenge. And that's all you can ask of him. And that's credit to, you know, everybody, but it's primarily with regards to Parker.
Yeah, definitely. Just sticking with keeping the faith, the club have put out a teaser of the next episode, I think it's episode 6, which is looking at primarily, I think, at Aaron Ramsey's return from injury, but also I think it touches upon kind of, there's some footage in the kind of short trailer of Jordan Bear and an interview with Nathan Redmond and what looks to be, you know, the kind of club doctor and psychological side of things. But Chris, I mean, we've often said we don't get enough insight, and, you know, certainly over the last couple of years we were left guessing kind of, you know, where players were and what was happening. And I know there's a very notable player that we're left guessing where the hell he is, but we've talked about this series before as being a real credit to the club, and whoever came up with the idea to do it in this way, it's been, you know, it's been really enjoyable to watch. And it may be because we're winning, and last season we were getting pumped, so the documentary when it came out was, you know, quite depressing. But it is a way of the club being able to kind of keep fans in the loop, isn't it, by doing these little kind of 12-minute episodes. And have you enjoyed them as much as I have?
Absolutely. Everyone likes to see behind the curtain, don't they? And we like a human interest story as well. You know, that's why you know, and the more we see of these sort of human stories, the more you feel for players. The more you know, they're playing for your club, and of course you want them to do well. But if you sort of have a feel for them as a person, as an individual, it adds to that as well. And, you know, I'm just seeing about Nathan Redmond's, obviously. I mean, he's had a bad time of it with injury as well, and his couple of years at Burnley. He may well walk out the door having had next to no impact on the pitch, but you sort of see his almost fatherly influence on Aaron Ramsey. He's saying he's like, you know, he's like a little brother to me, and he seems to be sort of mentoring him through. I mean, it's horrific, isn't it? To me, I mean, he's effectively had 14 months away from, you know, with an injury against Arsenal in the Premier League. I think he's a huge talent, and we hope he gets up to speed and ready to roll next season because there's a player there. But it's just good to see that sort of the struggle he's had, physically, mentally, what sort of bonds has he got behind the scenes, and there's clearly a very strong sort of support group there, and it speaks well of the club.
Yeah.
You say, come and sign for us, and even if when times are difficult, we'll see you through to the other side, sort of thing. And it's I just think it puts the club in a fantastic light. And I've never met Aaron Ramsey. He signed after I finished covering him, but I want him to do well as a human being, never mind a Burnley footballer.
Yeah, and Woody, I'm just kind of, as Chris was talking there about, you wanting these lads to do well, you can just imagine the reception on the turf if he, even if he comes on for 10 minutes against Millwall just to kind of get that almost milestone of I've played in 24-25, which I imagine psychologically getting a game in this season with him in on that trajectory, and we'll talk about his next game in a second, but you just think, don't you, that kind of the reception he will get. We've seen it with other players, haven't we, who come back from injury or illness, and, there's lots of kind of well-known returns, but it does show what a kind of family unit is created behind the scenes, isn't it, when, players are going through this. And Bayer we've not seen for goodness knows how long, as Chris mentioned. Redmond's been a long-term injury, injured person as well, but it must be a really lonely time because you just want to be out there playing football with your mates, don't you?
Of course you do. Of course you do. Everybody thinks that they're just picking up a wage packet. And yeah, some are. But the vast majority want to play. And it's nice to see that. And that's why this is a very smart shift. It's not a huge shift in terms of what they've done. Just scaling it back and making it for fans as opposed to it being a broader public relations exercise was arguably the best thing they could have done. And the fact that we bought into this side, we bought into this group of players, we've wound up, buying in, and, conversely, that means you buy a little bit more into the board, even though you see infinitely less of them, because you think better of this group of players that they brought in and what's going on, because that's what we want to see as fans.
Yeah.
We don't want to be arguing about, boardroom politics and all that kind of malarkey. So I think it's been brilliant, all told, and to see these individuals. And like you say, everybody will be rooting for them to get back and, get fit and show what they can do in a Burnley shirt. Because essentially, at the end of the day, that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants to see everybody else doing well. We don't want to see anybody, crap, crocked, or in between. And everybody's in the same position with regards to that.
I'm just having visions of an Aaron Ramsey winner against Millwall to send us up. Assist M. Trezor. Chris, wait till you see him, mate. He is top assist maker in Belgium a couple of years ago, I believe. I believe we've just been keeping him hidden.
Makes him sound like a chocolatier or something.
It certainly does.
Better line of work for him.
Quite possibly. Well, if anyone does want to see Aaron Ramsey's public return to action, I should say, because I think he got 45 minutes of the under-21s a week or so ago. The under-21s are playing this afternoon, Friday afternoon, 1 o'clock kickoff at Turf Moor against Brentford. That should be an interesting game, because I think Brentford have got quite an interesting approach to their kind of youth and B teams and things like that. But Scott Parker has confirmed that Ramsey will be playing some part in that game. So, and if you're a season ticket holder, look at us doing the club's PR from here. If you are a season ticket holder, you can get yourself into the under-21s game at Turf Moor for free. And I think the under-21s are doing quite well this season. I know they've lost a few of their players to various loans as we try and get kind of first team experience. But yeah, 1 o'clock kickoff UK time at the Turf. If you do fancy that and you've got nothing else to do on what's hopefully going to be a sunny and relatively warm Friday afternoon, looking out my window, blue sky at night, a red sky at night, Shepherd's Delight is what I was always told, and it's slightly claret as I look at it. So there we go.
Yeah.
just looking at kind of a couple of last little bits before we go, looking at former players really. I just wanted to, and we talked off air, but just wanted to get your views on James Tarkowski's challenge in the Merseyside derby on McAllister. It looked like quite a nice challenge to begin with. Then he almost chopped him in two, didn't he, Chris? I mean, it's something I've seen you do down the JJB Soccer Bowl at Shadsworth in the past.
Indeed. Yeah, I was an old school centre-half, and I loved those opportunities where you could win the ball clean as a whistle and leave a bit on your opponent. It was, I always like to test the temperature of a game before doing anything like that first. If you sort of, if the opposition was sort of leaving a foot in here and there, you thought, that's the sort of game we're playing, is it? But Tarky's, I mean, if Burnley fans remember, he absolutely smashed into Richarlison.
Yeah.
Similar situation a few years ago, and the Everton fans were spitting feathers, and they love it now. Of course, they love it when it's on the other foot, aren't they? But it's, I mean, if Big Dunk thinks it's a red card,
yeah.
Considering what Big Dunk used to get up to on a football field, it's fair to say it's a red card. It's a strange on it because McAllister doesn't fancy the challenge whatsoever, does he? And Tarky's committed to a 50-50, and it's a red card every day of the week, and it's baffling that VAR can look at that and decide it's not really, but it's no different to what Van Dijk did against Napoli a few years ago that Liverpool fans were finding excuses for, is it?
Yeah.
There's some odd decisions. I say the offside one doesn't sit right with me.
No,
he can sense Diaz, and he ends up making the attempt to get rid, and it's resulted in a goal. But he's then not offside in the second phase, is he? But he's led to that situation, hasn't he, Diaz, by being in an offside position, and they're a bit unlucky with that one.
Yeah, and Woody, would you fancy going into a challenge with James Tarkowski? Because, like you say, he has got a bit of form, and there's still image. You could just tell on his face he's looking to try and chop McAllister in two. Are you somebody you'd fancy that, Woody? Or are you kind of no thanks, pal? I'm getting out of the way as quickly as possible.
As a footballer, it's all I could do. You know what I mean? If you had stats on me, it'd be 0, apart from like sliding tackles, which would be 99. You know what I mean? It's what Ron Atkinson used to call a reducer, isn't it?
Mm.
And fair play to him. I still like to see that slipped in every now and again, I must admit.
Yeah, definitely. Adds a little bit of spice, doesn't it?
My cockles.
You got to watch non-league now. We've been spoilt over the last decade with like so many years in the Premier League, and I've been to watch a couple of non-league games, and you wins at every challenge, and then you realise it's just par for the course. The referee's not going to give anything, but almost every challenge would be in the Premier League. I mean, going to the screen and analysing it to a degree, it's a different sport now, non-league to Premier League football, and probably better for it.
Yeah, definitely. They all still play out from the back, don't they? One of the kind of hangovers from Pep Guardiola, but there we go. Just another little bit of public service broadcasting before we go, and I know this one's going to warm your cockles, Chris, but your mate Sean Dyche is appearing on Andy Hodgson's Fix Radio UK show tomorrow. Andy's a listener to the podcast, I believe, big Burnley fan. You'll have seen him and Phil Bird together on various commentaries, but he does a sports show, the Friday Sports Kickoff on Fix Radio UK. I have to be honest, I've never heard of it, but apparently it's the Builders Station. But he gets some brilliant guests on, and tomorrow he has got an interview with Sean Dyche, so that's Sean doing the rounds again. And he's also got Andy Ritchie, who I always quite liked, previewing the Manchester derby as well. So there you go. If you're looking for something to listen to.
He's not done many of these interviews lately as well, Sean, so...
I know, exactly, yeah. Yeah, we should perhaps try and get him on here, actually. Chances are he'd come on, but there we go. Anyway, there we go. That is it for the preview show. We'll be back on Monday with a look at what happened down in Coventry. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your trip to Coventry if you're going. Enjoy watching at home, wherever you are in the world. We will see you on Monday. And up the Clarets.
How many times do I have to tell you? Stop moaning!
Not going anywhere. I've never been happier. Only to wake up in a whole different world.